If the Emperor was the father of the legions Astartes, then Terra was their mother. He shaped his warriors with unmatched will and intellect. Yet the world of their birth left its own indelible mark upon them. Marks that were often less blessings than scars. These shaped the legion's culture, values, and way of war as deeply and subtly as the mysteries woven into their very flesh. To understand why the legions became what they were, one must first understand Terra herself. Old Earth, before the Emperor's rise, was a world steeped in blood, ignorance, and atrocity. There was no hope in that age, only darkness, and the fleeting, poisoned orders of tyrants, driven by madness and petty ambition. The Emperor changed everything. First came his hosts, forged from the techno-barbarian tribes who bent the knee to his banner. Then followed the gene-forged Thunder Warriors. And finally, he created the legions Astartes. With blood and fire, he tamed Terra, bringing order and enlightenment where there had only been chaos. It was this new order the 7th Legion was born to defend. Their earliest battle honor, Roma, speaks to their origins, for their first battalions were raised from across the breadth of Terra, where other legions drew from a single ethnic or national stock. The 7th drew people from all over the world. Even where other legions claimed rights of tithes, the 7th still took some of the youth for themselves, those who displayed the greatest endurance of body and mind. Taciturn, slow to speak, quick to act, such were the sons of the 7. Why recruits from such a wide pool shared these traits remains unclear. Perhaps it was deliberate, for the activation of the 7th Legion's gene seed brought intense agony, and such stock was best able to endure it. Or perhaps an early pattern of recruitment had hardened into tradition. Whatever the cause, their grim nature proved well suited to the purpose the Emperor had in mind. In war, the 7th Legion's concern was conquest in its truest form. Many of the Emperor's armies fought only to defeat the enemy and shatter their strongholds. But victory alone was not enough. A land could rise against the Imperium again, or offer a weakness for another foe to exploit. True conquest required not only the breaking of an enemy, but the holding of what was taken. This philosophy defined the 7th Legion. In attack, they would pay any price in their own blood to secure victory. In victory, they immediately set about consolidating their gains. Again and again, this pattern marked the Unification Wars. It was the 7th Legion that shattered the cities of the Crystal Sea, then raised the fortress of the 5th Circle from their ruins. In the ice-wrapped pinnacles of Himalaya, they lost 3 battalions defeating the witchery of the Windcaller clans. Yet, within solar days, the first Imperial Bastions were rising against the cold sky. Across Terra, the fruits of their fortress craft stood as grim reminders that the strength which had conquered these lands was now rooted in the earth itself. In their first solar decade, The Imperial Fists built 600 citadels in conquered lands. It is said the Legion's dead lie still within their foundations, their skulls and blood mingled with stone and mortar. From these bastions, order spread across the new domains. Old ways withered, and if rebellion stirred, the looming shadow of the fortress gave answer. Yet they were not merely builders and castellans. At their core, they were Crusaders, the most direct expression of the Emperor's dream to unite humanity. Fortresses secured their victories, but their hearts hungered for the next conquest. They never lingered long. While new walls rose behind them, they were already on the march into fresh, unbroken lands. Their warcraft was defined by massed shock assaults, wielding the full arsenal of the Legion. Multiple battalions would take the field together, striking with the force of a hammer blow. On the plains of Kinistar, the 5th Battalion broke the Tyrancy's lines with an arrowhead of 50 war machines, a charge whose dust cloud blotted out the sun. In the tunnels of Galabaz, they cracked the crust above a buried city, dropping into the exposed depths while the echoes of the blast still rolled across the mountains. And always, in the wake of destruction, they replaced what they had broken with something stronger. It was from these early campaigns that they earned their name. Those who looked upon the lands taken by the 7th Legion said it was as though the hand of the Emperor himself had descended, an unbreakable fist gripping the world. The Emperor approved of this title, decreeing they would forever be known as the Imperial Fists, granting them the right to bear the laurels of victory in their heraldry. True to their name, the newly named Imperial Fists accepted the honor in humble silence. The Primarchs are not merely men, they are something greater. Beings of a nature both sublime and unknowable. In each of them, the strengths found in a Space Marine are amplified, made deeper, sharper, more refined. Though they are spun from the seed of humanity, they are not human. The union of a Primarch and his Legion often changes the very soul of that Legion. And in the case of the Imperial Fists, the discovery of their Primarch did not alter their character. Rather, it strengthened it. When the 20 infant Primarchs were stolen from the Emperor's gene labs on Terra, they were scattered to distant worlds. Each would be shaped by the soil and sky of that world that found them. Rogal Dorn came to rest upon a world of ice and darkness, a place named Inwit. Inwit is a killer, its stars ancient, its heat fading into a cold red light. The world is tidally locked, one face drowned in perpetual night, the other in dim and joyless daylight. On the dark side lives the Splintered Land, frozen mountains, frost dunes, and mazes of ice-carved crevasses. Here, beasts stalk the snow, and under the frozen crust, thick black seas move sluggishly in the dark. Pale, blind creatures swim these waters, hunting by vibration and by a taste for blood. Far above, relics of a forgotten age hang in the sky. Space stations and orbital shipyards, older than any living memory. Their silent watch painted in the colors of endless auroras. The light side offers little more mercy. Drift-crusted saline seas, bare rock, and the unblinking gaze of the dying sun. Inwit's riches are not in its land or waters. They are in its people. These are not soft men and women. Inwit's children are raised to endure, to fight, and to survive. The ice storms can kill in seconds. Predators stalk the splintered land without mercy. A single lapse of focus can let the cold breach the warmth seals of a hold, freezing an entire kin group in hours. From this comes a people strong, grim, and loyal to the survival of the whole above the individual. They are traders and wanderers, moving between subterranean ice hives, bartering weapons, fuel, and rare technology. Clans clash often, and their young learn the sword and spear as soon as they learn to keep out the cold. They value what is useful, seize what they lack, and conquer those who hold knowledge they do not. Long before the Emperor's dream reached Terra, the people of Inwit carved a place for themselves among the stars. They conquered, assimilated, and fortified. With each world they took, their culture deepened, but Inwit itself remained the same. The ice hive stood. The clan disputes burned on. Their warlords and matriarchs lived as their vassals did, hardened, austere, and bound to the old ways that had made them strong. It was in this empire of ice and steel that Rogal Dorn came of age. Little is known of his earliest years, save that he was taken in by the House of Dorn of the Ice Caste. The patriarch of that clan, Dorn's adoptive grandfather, taught him war, strategy, and diplomacy. When Dorn learned that no blood bound the two of them, his loyalty still did not falter. He kept a fur-edged robe that had belonged to his grandfather and slept with it upon his bed every night. Dorn's mind and spirit matched the world that raised him. He expanded the Inwit's cluster reach, drilled its armies to perfection, and oversaw the building of starships, unlike anything seen since the Dark Age of technology. By the time the Emperor's Great Crusade reached Inwit in 835 M30, 40 standard years after his grandfather's death, Dorn was already its ruler, Emperor of the Inwit cluster. When the Imperium found him, Dorn stood at the helm of a relic, a massive starship from humanity's forgotten golden age, the Phalanx. The Emperor came aboard, and in that meeting, he did not merely find a lost son. He gained the loyalty and strength of an entire star-spanning empire. Dorn became the 7th Primarch to be found. The Emperor returned the Phalanx to his command and gave him the 7th Legion, warriors born from Dorn's own genetic template. From that first meeting, Dorn's loyalty was absolute. He never sought favor, never embellished the truth. Indeed, Dorn could not lie, even if it might have aided his cause. For this rare quality, a statue of Dorn stands on Macragge, one of only 4 besides Rabute Gilliman himself. As the master of the 7th Legion, Dorn commanded with a blend of discipline and inspiration. His genius for war was among the finest of the Primarchs. His victories during the Great Crusade were countless. Even Horus, the War Master himself, admitted that should the Imperial fists be tasked with defending a fortress against his own Luna Wolves, the siege would become an eternal stalemate. But Dorn was much more than just a warrior. He was a builder, a defender, and from the moment he bent the knee upon the phalanx, he was, and would remain, the Emperor's unbreakable shield. Rogal Dorn was a man of iron focus, his energy unyielding, his nature reserved and stoic. Many saw only the dour mask, the emotionless cast of his features, and mistook it for coldness. But that was to misunderstand him entirely. Beneath the stone lay fire. He was cautious, calculating. Yet when he chose his course, he pursued it with relentless force. His emotions were rare to surface, but when they did, they could shake the ground and darken the sun. At the Adonis cluster, when the Zahelican breed threatened to overwhelm the defenses, it was said that Dorn's cold rage held the battlements as firmly as the arms of the warriors standing there. At Castoris, his voice rang from the firelit sky to the burning sea, an admonishment as sharp and final as the fall of an executioner's axe. Leman Russ himself once described him that way, swift and unforgiving as the falling edge of an axe. Yet Dorn could brood. He could dwell on slights or failures, letting them gnaw beneath his granite calm. His loyalty was absolute, but he was an idealist. The why of his wars mattered as much as their victories. Few glimpsed that side of him during the Great Crusade, though those closest might have sensed it. In his near-fatal clash with Conrad Kurz in the Shiraut system, or his brief schism with Ferrus Manus after a particularly bloody campaign. Only after the Heresy, when so much lay in ruins, never to be rebuilt, would history suggest that even perfect loyalty could carry a flaw. But in the years when Dorn and his legion first came together, that shadow still lay far ahead. Their union was swift and complete. The vision of the Imperium, the purpose of the Great Crusade, matched Dorn's own ideals with uncanny precision. The Imperial fists reflected everything he had built in the Inward Cluster, and everything he dreamed it could become. From their first meeting, he demanded of them all that he demanded of himself. When Legion Master Matthias and the veterans knelt before him, pledging their fealty, Dorn said nothing. He watched them fight. Only when he had seen them in battle did he speak, telling them they had much to do and more to learn. To Matthias, he offered one word of thanks and named him High Castellan of the Inward Cluster. With the title came a duty: to raise 30 regiments of new Imperial fists from Inwit. Without pause, Dorn and his sons turned back to the stars. For 16 decades, they fought at the burning edge of the Great Crusade, from one war zone to the next, honored by their brother legions, rising ever higher in renown. They built as they conquered, fortifying worlds before moving on, leaving their keeps in the care of appointed castellans. They governed nothing, wrote no laws. They were warriors of the Imperium, not its rulers. On Necromunda, they broke the orcs in the Ash Wastes. the Hive Lords gave their thanks not with tribute, but with men, recruits for the Legion. A fortress chapel was raised, and the Fists stood there as honored guests, ever masters. Dorn wanted soldiers, not subjects. "I want recruits, not vassals," he said, refusing the trappings of lordships that other Primarchs claimed from their homeworlds. The Phalanx gave them unmatched mobility, and they became the Emperor's strategic reserve, masters of sieges and urban war. When the Emperor returned to Terra to build his capital, he brought Dorn and the Imperial Fists with him, naming them his Praetorians, and giving Dorn the task of designing the palace defenses. Not all took it well. Perturabo raged when he learned Dorn believed the palace could withstand even the Iron Warrior's siegecraft, unleashing accusations so wild that even his own sons were stunned into silence. From then on, those two legions rarely fought side by side. The Fists remained ever at the Emperor's side. The Iron Warriors marched in Horus's vanguard. Some say that similarity breeds understanding, but in the case of Dorn and Perturabo, it bred only contempt and hatred. Both were reserved, both unyielding, both artisans of war who valued indomitability and endurance. It should have made them closer than brothers, yet it drove a chasm between them instead. Perhaps it was the silence of one grating on the other, the blunt honesty of one sparking the other's temper, the stubbornness ensuring that once a dispute began, neither would yield. Even in war they clashed. Perturabo favored brutal directness, willing to grind his forces down to achieve victory. Dorn, though willing to pay the price when needed, rarely accepted such losses without necessity. Dorn was the idealist, Perturabo the pragmatist. Upon those cracked foundations, decades of rivalry piled honors, slights, and mischance, until the enmity between them would one day bring both their legions to the brink of destruction. The greatest victory of the Great Crusade came at Olenor, the destruction of the largest Orc empire the nascent Imperium had yet faced. Urlak Uruk's green-skinned dominion fell only after a campaign involving 100,000 Astartes, 8 million Imperial troops, and thousands of warships. When the Orcs were crushed, the Emperor returned to Terra to begin his great project, opening the ancient webway for mankind. In his absence, he named Horus Lupercal War Master, commander of all Imperial forces. The title set Horus above all his brothers. Some welcomed it: Sanguinius, Lorgar, Fulgrim. Others rallied against it: Angron, Perturabo. A few, like Guilliman, Khan, and Dorn, simply accepted it. Horus had ever been the brightest, the first, and the favorite. To these steady brothers, Horus turned for counsel. Dorn's military genius was second only to the War Master's own, and the respect between them was genuine. Through the Crusade, the Imperial Fists rose high in honor. They were called to break deadlocks, hold failing fronts, and fight beside the Emperor more than any other legion. On Ophelia 8, they charged at his side, 100 custodians and 100,000 fists at his back. In other wars, they formed the vanguard with Horus himself. They did not blaze across the stars with the spectacle of some legions, but they were the bedrock of the Imperium, the stone upon which it was built. That status bred resentment. The Iron Warriors were not alone in it. Dorn's uncompromising honesty could wound as easily as it inspired. It may be that very trait which kept him from being named War Master. For Horus could unite where Dorn might divide. And so instead, Dorn was given the title of Praetorian of Terra, Defender of the Throne World. As Horus drove the crusade forward, Dorn withdrew to guard the Emperor's seat. And in that choice, the seeds of the Imperium's fate were sown. On Terra, Dorn set to work. The Imperial Palace would be a fortress without equal. Its defenses a masterpiece of stone and steel. When the Heresy came, those walls would be tested as never before, and the Imperial fists, standing upon them, would become the last bulwark between the throne and the traitor's hand. Before the 7th Legion could return to Terra in full strength, the galaxy was already burning. The warp itself had risen against the Emperor's realm, great storms boiling through the void. Caught within their claws, the fleet of the Imperial fists drifted for long, bitter weeks. It was in that darkness they found her, the Eisenstein, a Death Guard frigate battered and broken, limping from the slaughter of Istvan III. From her decks came tales no loyal son wished to hear. Horus Lupercal, the War Master himself, had turned against the Emperor. Fulgrim, Mortarion, Angron, all in open rebellion. Rogal Dorn refused to believe it. He stood before Captain Nathaniel Garrow, rage in his eyes, and nearly struck the man down for daring to name Horus a traitor. But the words of Garrow, of Iketon Cruz, of the Luna Wolves, and of Euphrates Keeler, Remembrancer, and one day Imperial Saint, wore away the Praetorians' disbelief. At last, Dorn accepted the truth. Orders were given. The bulk of the Legion turned their prows toward the Istvan system. Dorn himself took his veteran companies back to Terra to speak the words to the Emperor in person. The schism of Mars had torn the Red Planet apart. Those who still served the throne were few, and their survival hung by a thread. Malcador the Sigillite, regent of Terra, placed a grave task upon Dorn: secure the forges of Mars for the Imperium's war. The Praetorian turned to his champion, First Captain Sigismund. 4 companies of Imperial fists, with the strength of the Imperialis Auxilia at their side, would descend upon the manufactoria of Mondus Gamma and Mondus Oculum. These were the heart of the Legion's lifeblood, the forges where armor and weapons for the Astartes were wrought. Dorn's plan was simple: strike fast, hold the forges, and push outward. The landings came under fire. On the plains beneath Pavonis Mons, Saturnine hoplites clashed with the warped horrors of the Dark Mechanicum. At Mondus Gamma, Captain Cambadias and 4 Jovian regiments fought in the shadow of the forge's great gates, holding against numbers of 100-fold their own. The fighting was brutal. Mondus Gamma's armor forges and ammunition silos were taken, but the landing fields bled red with the losses. Cambadias could not hold. At Mondus Oculum, Sigismund found an unexpected ally. Zagreus Kane, fabricator locum, still loyal to the Emperor. Thousands of suits of Mark IV Maximus armor and twice as many weapons were loaded for the voyage to Terra, but enemy forces closed in. Infantry, armor, Skitarii, and 2 Titan legions, nearly 60 god engines. Sigismund's orders were clear. The forges must be emptied, not held. Kane warned him, if Oculum and Gamma both fell, the legions could never replenish their losses. And then the sky itself turned to fire. Both forges burned. Vast halls of irreplaceable knowledge vanished in the flames. Barely 1,000 loyal warriors escaped the Red Planet. Yet their sacrifice saved tens of thousands of suits of power armor, weapons, and war plate that would tip the scales in the war to come. Terra was a fortress of 2 walls. The inner wall, the gate to the Emperor's hidden great project, guarded by the Master of Mankind himself, the Custodes, and the Sisters of Silence. And the outer wall, the Sol system itself, a chain of defenses stretching from the palace's golden spires to the darkness beyond Pluto. Upon that wall stood Rogal Dorn. The Sol defenses were divided into 3 spheres. Sigismund commanded the first, the farthest from Terra. Halbrecht held the second. Efried commanded the third, encircling Mars. Terra itself was under Dorn's own hand. Millions of troops, thousands of warships, bastions beyond counting, all waiting for the signal. When the traders came, the call would be simple. Fire on the mountains. And come, the traders did. The Alpha Legion would not simply break that wall, they would humiliate it. Their agents, dormant for decades, rose on Terra itself, striking in the investiary where the statues of the Great Crusade's Primarchs stood. 2 plinths had always been empty, for the lost. The traitor statues lay shrouded. One by one they were destroyed, all but 2, Alpharius and Rogal Dorn. The region forbade word of the act from spreading. The insult would be answered in time. And when the Alpha Legion came for Pluto, Aeromaster Kel Silonius led the fleet, seizing its moons. But past there, only Dorn and his Huskarls would ever know. It was Alpharius himself who struck the outer defenses. His fleet, more than 200 vessels, drifted towards Sol for a year, silent, cold, and hidden. Across the system, sleeper agents moved, murder and sabotage. And then Pluto burned. Kerberos' fortress guns fell to the 20th Legion and turned upon her sister moons. Hydra, the linchpin of the astropathic network, became Alpharius' prize. First Captain Sigismund had only 30 ships to meet the assault. Amid the chaos, Archimaeus, master of the Huskarls, saw the truth. The enemy's goal was Hydra. He led his warriors into the fight and into Alpharius' path. And the Huskarls fell one by one. Archimaeus was mortally wounded. And it was then that the Phalanx arrived, and Dorn himself had come. His fleet smashed through Kerberos' guns, and the Praetorian himself teleported into Hydra's heart. There, amidst shattered stone and the glow of astropathic relays, Dorn met Alpharius in battle. Their duel was fierce, the pale spear flashing in the traitor's hands. As Alfarius moved for the kill, Orchimeus, dying, tried to strike, his blade glancing harmlessly away. But Dorn had anticipated the blow. He stepped in, pinning Alfarius with his shoulder, seizing the spear, and cutting through his brother's wrists with Storm's teeth. And then one final strike split Alfarius' skull. The Alpha Legion broke. In that moment, far away, Omegon felt his twin's death. When Horus called for Alfarius, Omegon took the name for himself, and the 20th Legion passed into his shadow. And when finally the skies above Terra burned, and the enemy came for the throne world itself, the Imperial fist stood shoulder to shoulder with the White Scars and Blood Angels, and together they held the walls of the Imperial Palace against the tide of chaos. It had been Rogal Dorn himself who had built that palace in an age before treachery, and when the Emperor commanded it, he reforged its defenses to withstand the full fury of Horus's traitor legions. They fought until hope was almost gone, and then came the Emperor's final march to the Vengeful Spirit, Horus's own flagship. Dorn and the Imperial fists accompanied him aboard that cursed vessel. And when the last battle ended, it was Dorn who found them. The Emperor's broken body upon the deck, Sanguinius fallen, and Horus dead. The grief was a weight he could scarcely bear. And from that moment, Dorn's course changed. The Praetorian became the Avenger, while the Ultramarines brought order to a shattered Imperium. The Imperial fists hunted the traitor legions without mercy, razing fortress after fortress during the Great Scouring. Dorn led them, clad in black, his customary restraint cast aside until the guilty were punished. Some whispered that his crusade was penance, that he saw the Emperor's death as his own failing. Whatever the truth, Dorn did not return to the high councils of the Imperium until Rabute Guilliman summoned him to Terra, there to hear the Codex Astartes. Guilliman's decree would break every legion into smaller chapters of 1,000 warriors. Many Primarchs agreed. Dorn did not. Leman Russ and Vulcan stood with him in opposition. Korax and Yagatai Khan sided with Guilliman. Among the Imperial fists, one voice supported the Codex. Captain Auriax Dantalion, a veteran of the Great Crusade, the Heresy, and the Siege of Terra itself. Dantalion believed Guilliman's reforms were necessary to prevent another warlord from wielding the power of an entire legion. Dorn's disappointment was plain. He would not be swayed. The tension between them grew, the legion itself splitting over the issue. Civil war seemed near. Only when the new chapters and the old legion stood poised for battle did Dorn relent. He saw that to resist the Codex was to invite another war, and he would not fracture the Imperium again. And with a heavy heart, he agreed to the second founding. From the 7th Legion were born the Black Templars, Crimson Fists, Excoriators, Iron Knights, and Fists Exemplar. Sigismund gathered the Crusaders and Zealots. Alexis Pollux took the younger warriors, and Demetrius Cataphalic led the attrition fighters who had held the palace walls. Dantalion, whose counsel Dorn had once rejected, was made first chapter master of the Fist's Exemplar, a home for those who shared his progressive vision. By yielding, Dorn reassured the High Lords of Terra. When the Imperial Fists emerged from the Second Founding, their adherence to the Codex matched even the Ultramarines themselves. The feud between the Imperial Fists and the Iron Warriors had festered since the Great Crusade, born of Perturabo's jealousy and Dorn's renown. Both were masters of siegecraft, but one had turned traitor. On Sebastius IV, Perturabo raised the Eternal Fortress, an 8-pointed star of defenses. Without his usual caution, Dorn led his legion straight into it. The battle was a nightmare of trench and redoubt, ambush and counter-ambush. The Fists endured. Ammunition spent, they fought with knives and flooded trenches, giving no quarter. The Iron Warriors could not finish them. Chaos had made them fierce, but it had not given them the faith to pay the final price. And so, as they faltered, the Ultramarines arrived. Guilliman had judged that Perturabo's death was not worth Dorn's, and drove the Iron Warriors from the field. Bloodied but unbroken, the Imperial Fists turned at once to the Codex's reorganization. For 2 decades, they rebuilt in seclusion, their successor chapters carrying the Emperor's light to war in their stead. In 781 M31, during Abaddon's first Black Crusade, Dorn led a vastly outnumbered Imperial force against the War Master's fleet. He struck in hit-and-run raids, buying time until reinforcements could come. Aboard the Sword of Sacrilege, he led a desperate assault upon the bridge. He never returned. When the search was over, only a single skeletal hand was found. The hand of Dorn rests aboard the phalanx, its bones engraved with the names of every chapter master since the Heresy. 10,000 years of history etch the ivory surface. A list of heroes, each bone matched to its bearer. Whether it is truly Dorn's hand, none can say. Perhaps he fell on the Sword of Sacrilege. Perhaps he lived. Only the Emperor knows. And when the Great Rift split the galaxy, the sons of Dorn did not rest. To them, the Imperium was a fortress, its worlds the bastions and gatehouses to be held, retaken. The phalanx hangs above Terra still, ever sentinel, departing only for wars of direst need, before returning to guard the Segmentum Solar once more. Such is the duty of the Sentinels of Terra. It was Dorn's duty, and in their hearts, it ever will be.